So it's my great pleasure to be here today with Peter. We are going to speak about his experience and his long experience in strategic thinking and successfully bringing companies, and in particular Penspen, to the success that they have. So Peter, do you want to introduce a little shortly yourself?
Sure, yeah. I'm originally a mechanical engineer. My first roles were in oil and gas offshore, working as a commissioning engineer. And then I followed that through to management consultancy for about 10 years, worked in oil and gas, but also in other sectors. And that experience was very helpful in terms of developing a strategic perspective on business. I followed that by setting up an exploration business in oil and gas, which was...
So you were an entrepreneur?
An entrepreneur, exactly, yeah. It was a startup of sorts, and we explored for oil and gas in the North Sea in Morocco. And then I left that about 10, 11 years ago to start this role. So I'm now the CEO of Penspen, and I guess we can talk more about that now.
So for our audience, to let you know, Peter, we're going to go through a process, or your thinking process. This series is called Strategic Thinkers, and you're clearly one. And the idea is really to nick all the secrets that you have developed, your heuristics, your tips and practice, or maybe things you learned, because you told me before you did a very celebrated MBA. And so maybe we can start by giving a little bit of the context of when you took over, and if you want to explain a particular period. You have a very long tenure as a CEO. It's quite spectacular what you did, because there is not that many CEOs that they have such a long tenure. And it would be great to have a little bit of the context. Tell us about a period you want to talk about, or the entire duration of your tenure as CEO.
Great, okay. So the big picture context about Penspen is actually the company has been around since the mid-50s. So it's been a long time in operation, and it's known for pipelines and designing and maintaining pipelines onshore and offshore and all sorts. And it's grown over its history to include other types of oil and gas assets, production facilities, storage facilities, and so on. And it was acquired by its parent company, which is Sidara, currently owned fully by Sidara in about 1990, I think. So that's the context. And it grew over the course from, say, 2000 onwards quite rapidly. When I joined, I was recruited by the board of Sidara because the CEO of Penspen was retiring, and they wanted somebody to come in and take over. And at the time, the business had I guess it was struggling from growing pains. It had gone from about 200 people to about 1,000 people over the course of about 6 or 7 years. And I think it really was struggling a little bit with that scale up, because the kind of process and management team wasn't really in place to manage.
What do you think were the challenges you inherited when you took over?
The challenge, well, there was quite a few. I mean, the company did not have a strong sales pipeline because most of the leadership were engineers and not business development sales type people. And so they were very opportunistic in terms of the work that they pursued, and that meant they took on risk that they really probably couldn't manage. So there were projects that were in trouble. There were some bad debts. In terms of getting an accurate picture of business performance was challenging because the quality of the data available was weak, and it was late. It took about 3 or 4 months to get accounts out. So there's a whole host of issues relating to the client relationships, the markets that they were in. They're probably too fragmented, the management processes, and then just getting the right team in place, the right people on the right seats, so that we could kind of grow the business.
And all that peppered by an industry which has...
It's cyclical.
Yeah, cyclical. Yeah.
Absolutely, and that was part of the challenge for me. Was I started at the beginning of 2014, and then the oil and gas sector went through a recession from about mid 2014 to 2016, where capital budgets shrank because of a whole host of reasons, and that meant that our sales pipeline shrank. So my first job over the first few years was restructuring. I mean, we actually shrank the business down to about half its size, closed about 4 or 5 different offices, restructured the management team, but also focused on building the base for the future, right? And that was about putting in really robust management processes, making sure that we had accurate data in a timely fashion, and that we were starting to be able to forecast where the business was heading so we could take anticipatory action if we needed to, but also a lot of focus on what are the markets that we can have a sustainable business in, and which markets do we need just to get out from because there's no long-term future in the business. So we and the team that I pulled together did a lot of that work in the first few years, while the industry was really going through a contraction and margins were getting hammered, and we just took the opportunity to clean house and set a solid base for growth.
This is a perfect setting to just ask you, what are the questions that, when you took over, I mean, this is the first phase of your tenure. When you took over, what kind of question did you ask yourself? Because you've clearly found the answers, and they were the correct answer. And so, probably when you were at the MBA, you follow course of strategies, and we always say that there is a cascade of choices or cascade of questions that you need to have, like, what is our winning ambition? You just mentioned the second question is, where should we play? Where do we play currently? Where should we exit? Where should we double up, out? Then once you choose the field, you need to decide how to win. And are those the questions you're using, or what are your secret questions?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think there's a huge amount of secrecy to it. It's really common sense, and it's understanding, okay, what are we good at, right? What are we better than other people at? And knowing that. So one of the first things that I did was ask that question of not just the business, but also of our clients. What are we good at? What do you use us for? And then getting a really good understanding of that, then saying, okay, well, in what markets can we deploy that and really, use those capabilities to grow the business and to make money, and in also understanding some of the things that we do are actually kind of commoditized and highly competitive. Some of the things that we do are much more unique and differentiated. And how do we shift the business towards that more differentiated end of the business, where we can be known for our expertise and our technical skills rather than competing with a wide market. So it was those sorts of questions early on, really getting a good sense of what we're good at, what we have the kind of the right to win at, and trying then to shape the business around that and make sure that we're focused on those capabilities, communicating them, developing them, and then finding, focusing on markets where we have a long run growth potential.
So if I just go back to what you said, so you look first at the capabilities. You said, what are we good and what we are exceptional. Then you're looking at the market and then say, where can I deploy those capabilities with more success?
Yeah.
And that is part of your planning.
Yeah.
And one of the things that when I discuss with people like yourself, it's always very difficult and tricky is, how do you avoid biases in evaluating capabilities? Because sometimes it's very difficult to put an hard figure or an hard metric on a core competence, if we want to use the term that we use in. So how do you go about it? Do you triangulate, ask different sources, or do you make yourself up?
That's a very good question, and I think it brings to mind for me an important part of our strategy, and what I've really tried to build is a very positive culture in the business. So we structure our culture around our values, and we try and weave that into everything that we do. But the kind of culture that I have tried to develop is one where it's open, where it's a non-blame culture, where people can challenge, where people can speak their minds and offer contrary points of view. And my approach to leadership is to kind of stimulate that and listen to other people and try and bring that challenge into the way that we run the business. But also, importantly, to be able to use that to get to a point where you can make a decision and move forward. And that's really often, I think, something that businesses struggle with is, on the one hand, being open to challenge and diverse opinion, but being able to come to a decision and move forward, even when you don't have, unanimous consent, right? You often don't. But you've got to move forward. You've got to. You've
And
got
how
to.
do you do that? Do you impose the decision eventually? Somebody, does the bus stop with you?
Yeah, I
or-
mean, the buck does stop with me, and it's part of my job is to make sure that we get to that point. I mean, if I have to, I will. Yeah, say, okay, this is the way that we're going, and provide that direction. My preference is to try and establish alignment and get alignment and people on board. But if I have to, I will, because we have to move forward. And I think that's a key leadership role is to make sure that on the one hand you get buy-in, but also you move forward.
And what do you think is, if you look at those choices, which are, you're a very large group, and from what I understand, you deliver services across the world. How do you get the strategy from the boardroom to the next level, not just in this building, but across the organization?
So
what's your secret there?
Okay, and so I guess I would come back to the culture is where it starts, and our vision. Our vision is about improving access to secure and sustainable energy for communities, right? That's our vision. That's what we do. Everybody understands that, and we talk about that. But then also our values, 5 values around working responsibly, about managing our people, commercial success, our commitments, and technical excellence. And we weave that into the way that we manage performance and set objectives. So people's objectives are within those buckets. We evaluate that performance on an annual basis. We recruit people on the basis of that. We look for those qualities. So that culture is a key part of it, and then then communicating that around the business and role modeling those behaviors is important. So we communicate. I think quite a bit to the business. We can always communicate more, but we have town halls. We give people an update on where the business is and what our long-term goals are. We summarize our strategy in I think in easy to digest ways. We have kind of 4 pillars to our strategy, and we repeat that every time we get together to make sure that people understand what we're doing, where we're going, and what we're trying to achieve. So a lot of it is about the culture and communication and trying to be open. That's another thing I think about the way that I manage. I'm very open with information on the business. Everybody knows financial performance because we share that with everybody, or anybody who wants to know. And if it's good or if it's bad, and if it is, if we need to take corrective action, we talk about how we do that. Or if it's doing well, then why and what can we do more? So being open about that, so that people understand the context, they understand where you're trying to get to, and then people can align around that.
That's very, very interesting. And when once you make the choices, what is your school of thought about strategy and execution? Are they the yin and the yang? Because I had many discussions with people who say execution is the key in strategy, but often I say even if you spend only little time on strategy, you need to have very clear the strategy so that then you can execute well. On the other hand, if you have a great strategy but you don't execute it, you got a very good theory but never do the practice. How do you balance the two? The strategic, because I guess in your industry things can change very quickly. You may have a great strategy, but then either a competitor caught you up, or things outside are changing.
Yeah, I think for me, strategy is, to kind of maybe oversimplify it a little bit, but in a pragmatic way, the way I think about strategy is, what are the bets you're going to place this year that are not going to deliver you any money this year, but it may pay off next year or the year after, right? So it's kind of about...
So you divide it in horizons. You have an horizon 1, horizon 2,
so
horizon
strategy
3.
is like 2-3 years down the road, where do we want to be? And obviously there's bigger picture trends, which are 5-10 year. You got to factor into that. But from a business management point of view, it's like, what are we going to do this year that's going to pay off next year, the year after that, right? And you got to be able to articulate that so that you can start then folding into your business plan for this year, how you're going to move in that direction. Now, so for example, one of the things that we've been doing for some time is positioning ourselves for energy transition work in hydrogen, carbon capture, and that sort of electrification, that area. And that's a market that we identified as a strategic priority for us 5-6 years ago. And even though the market was, was actually quite small at that time, we thought this is going to grow. We have to be part of this. So we started, 5-6 years ago, started trying to position ourselves for that business. And it was initially just small stuff, right? It was about, positioning ourselves as thought leaders, so hosting webinars or issuing papers on the engineering challenges relating to carbon capture or to hydrogen or green ammonia, whatever it is, to show that we were thinking about this and we wanted to be part of that solution. And gradually, then we started to win small scopes of work, and it's been a consistent thing. Like I say, every year we make sure that part of our plan includes that, so that we're moving towards that goal. And now, we've just announced that we're doing the engineering for the first high-pressure carbon capture pipeline in the UK. That's been the result of 5 years of work, right? And having that, okay, what's the bet I'm going to place in 2000 or 2001 on where we need to be in a few years' time, and how are we going to get there, and how do we work that into our annual plans?
That's a beautiful example of making it clear. I mean, you had a vision about a new market trend, then you choose to enter a market where you were not present, you build a value proposition over time, no rush, and then I guess you build the operating model around it to deliver it. And so that, I'm sure that from your time at the MBA is a very famous framework called the three horizon, which everybody confuses always with short, medium, and long term. Because 5 years ago, that was time zero for you.
Right.
It was not the long term. You spend time, resources at that time, you feed it through, eventually become Horizon 2, and now you're scaling. I don't know if it's already a big part of your business, but it sounds like one. But now, what is the role? Because that's very exciting, new things, and companies, they get very excited about that. What is the role of the core business? What is the role of continuous improvement in your business? Because as usual, people are getting excited about Horizon 2 and Horizon 3, but what pays the bill is Horizon 1, which might be the bread and butter. What is your view about that? Is that part of your strategy, or is it something, because you mentioned for you strategy is thinking ahead of time, which is there a component also of looking after the core?
No, absolutely. And that is actually job one, is to make sure that that you're doing things as efficiently as you can. So, we had one of our goals was to grow the business. So, and we've done that over the last 5 years. We've doubled the business in size, right? So we're ticking that box. But we've got to be able to do it profitability, and the business, given the market and where it's come from, did have a significant profitability challenge. So, and the only way that we were going to be able to address that was by what we call operational excellence. How do we do things more efficiently? How do we make sure that we're avoiding cost, projects where we lose money, or that we deliver the money, the margin that we said we're going to do, that we minimize our overheads. We have a lean operation. And so every year it's been about improving how we manage the business. So we've gone from from a financial management point of view, where everything was on spreadsheets, and there was a big exercise of consolidating stuff every month to try and get it into a way that we could analyze and interpret, to where now everything's on dashboards, and we have live information on projects, and there's less time being spent on all of that manual, moving spreadsheets around, whatever else, and more time spent on managing the business and making better decisions using that data. So that's an example of how we've improved the business through continuous improvement, and we've set up systems to try and capture that. We have a continuous improvement system. Anybody can make an observation, it'll go into the system, and then it'll be processed, and we'll decide what to do with that. We do try and build that into the way that we manage the business, so that year on year we get better and better.
Now we spoke so far about choices of doing stuff, additional stuff, or doing things differently. How important is for you to choose something not to do?
Oh, very important. And we do it all the time, actually. We decide on projects that we're not going to pursue, or we're not going to bid, because we've learned from the past that, and we're in the luxurious position that we can do that. And that's the issue, is if you don't have a well-established sales pipeline, and where you're going to get your revenue from and what contracts you want to win, to build a business, then you're in a position where you have to take what's given to you, right? But we're in a position where we don't have to do that. We can, for projects that are too risky, or that we're just not strong enough to deliver, we have a process where we say, no, we're not going to do that. Because we know that, one, we probably won't make money doing it, and two, we'll spend a lot of management time trying to sort out problems that we really shouldn't have had in the first place. So I think we are quite good at that. That's one example. And then another thing would be sort of, getting into, say, new markets or new countries. That might be another reason that we filter things out. For example, we closed down our Asia Pacific region because it wasn't sustainable. We still get some opportunities coming through, but we're not there. So we say, we're not going to do that.
And how important is for you to get, a lot of CEOs like yourself, they tell me the biggest disease of strategies, something they call immunity to change. I mean, there are some scholars that, how do you avoid that creation of immunity? Because some people say, there is a new change, but at the end we're going to keep on doing it. How do you instill that urge of doing things right beyond your boardroom? And especially for a company that you are the ultimate distributed organization, because you have teams.
Yeah.
The real organization are teams working offsite, maybe in remote areas, which of course they can connect digitally.
Yeah.
So how do you avoid, or how do you cure the immunity to change that sometime organization has?
That's an interesting question. For us, change is about, really, it's behavioral change. When we're making a change to the business, people need to do things differently or behave differently. And so it's getting alignment within the leadership that this is something that we're going to do. So I have an executive committee of myself included, 5 who are in charge of the large parts of the business, but then below that we have a layer of leadership. We call the executive leadership team, who we work closely with to make change happen, right? And I guess it's about getting buy-in, so being a bit collaborative about the business plans that you put together, identifying what it is that we need to change in the business, and then once we've agreed that, it's about measuring it, and that's really a key thing. Is once you've decided you're going to make a change to the business, measuring the outcome that you're looking for, and tracking that and setting it into objectives, and having regular discussions about how much progress you're making. But I have to mention my HR team here, who are really fantastic at enabling change, behavioral change to happen. And having people like that in the business who understand how to overcome those sort of the resistance, the roadblocks that people naturally have to doing something differently is really, really key. And I kind of see them as part of they're kind of our operations team. We are a people business, and the HR function is sort of like they help manage the factory of producing what we do.
That's your factory. You are the ultimate professional firm.
That's it. That's our factory.
Of highly talented, highly intelligent engineers and all sorts.
So between our human resources team and the finance team, the finance team gives the information and the data and the forecast about how the business is performing, and the controls as well. But the HR team is about is maintaining and developing the capacity to deliver that revenue and deliver that business.
This is so insightful. Now, to conclude, because we already took a lot of your time, what would be, as a strategic thinker, what would you, and a strategic executor, because you're probably one in 10 that are good both at thinking and doing, because there are some statistics from the Harvard Business Review that shows that only about 10%, 8 to 10% of CEOs, they feel confident both in strategy and execution. And so what would be the tips or what for you makes a great strategic thinker that is able to execute or enable the organization to execute?
Gosh, that's an interesting question. I think it's easy to get caught up in big theories, big ideas, and so on. I think the art to it is really trying to be as pragmatic as you can about strategy. How, for me, it kind of goes back to how are we going to make a profit in 3 or 4 years' time, but also being able to test the realism of what you come up with. I mean, and we've done it in the past where we think, okay, here's a new strategy we could pursue. Let's get into a new area, and maybe didn't do sufficient due diligence on how realistic is that. If we, for example, building, say, an engineering business in the US, right? We do asset management in the US. We don't do engineering. How realistic is it that we're going to turn up in that market when there's a lot of engineering companies there already, and we're going to build a business and really test that idea? I think that's probably the art to combining the strategy with the execution. When you've got the great strategic idea, you really got to test it and make sure that it really is an opportunity, that you have a right to win at that, and that you can then build that into your plan. And the example I go back to, I guess, with energy transition is, the reason we knew we could get into the market was because it was a new market. It was white space. Nobody else was doing it, right? And we knew that we had the skills that we could use to get into that market over time and position ourselves. Versus, in the past we've thought, well, should we be doing more in petrochemicals? And we looked at that market, and the issue is it's an established market. There are players in that market already, and the question we would have to ask ourselves is, what are we bringing that's any different, that makes us, gives us any right to compete in that market? So it's being able to ask those questions of your strategy, to kind of road test it and make sure that it's realistic and it's achievable.
It's very beautiful what you said, because I always think of strategy like a theory, and the plan is your protocol of experimentation, like
Right.
any scientist.
Yeah.
And they need to have a theory, they need to have an illumination about something that doesn't exist or that can be done better. But then the only way to figure it out is to run some experiments, and a strategic plan is nothing else than a protocol to do it, and then something will work, something will not. So thank you very much, Peter. That was a great talk, and looking forward to see the final product and also the script.
Great. Well, thank you
you.
very much. No.